What's up, my alphas? Welcome to Leading the Pack. I'm your host, Dom Clegg, a mental performance coach and former college football coach, here to help you turn your mindset into your ultimate weapon and help you become the alpha of your life. Now it's time to level up and lead your pack. Let's go attack this work together. I'm really excited to have Coach Clod on here today to give you a little bit of an insight on Coach Jeremy Clodfelder. He serves as the head coach for football and softball over at Paris High School in Illinois. Coach Clod brings a wealth of experience in sports leadership. He's also a certified trainer for the Power of Positive Leadership with John Gordon Companies, and he's also a certified coach for Ben Newman Company. So he's very, very certified when it comes to being a leader and being able to coach people both on and off the field. He also is committed to fostering leadership and personal growth through encapsulating his guiding principle of live and lead. So with a passion of building strong team cultures and developing resilient athletes, Coach Clodfelder exemplifies core themes of mindset, discipline, process development, and leadership, which we'll try and dive into and explore today. So Coach Clod, thanks for joining the podcast today.
I'm fired up. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. This is one that I think will be really cool for a lot of high school, but even college coaches about how you kind of balance the two of male athletes, female athletes, and how you can be a head coach of both. Because to be honest, like I've seen head coaches, maybe they're the head coach of football, but then they're like the assistant track coach or the assistant wrestling coach, maybe even the head track coach, but never really kind of balancing both the male perspective for an athlete and then also the female perspective. So I want to understand a little bit how you manage the unique challenges of being a head coach for two different sports, and then we'll kind of dive into that other part.
Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't come without failings. That happens. It's part of life. It's part of leadership. It's the way it goes. But, it's very similar, really. It's not as far apart as one would think. I came to Paris High School in 2016 as the head football coach, and by 17, we were the first time ever qualifier for the state playoffs. And then a board member and principal asked me if I would, consider taking on the softball job. At the time, the softball program had 4 different head coaches in 4 years, and it really wasn't fair. And I was brutally honest with them that I really wasn't interested in the idea of it, and I've never coached that type of game. I've been a football coach forever, at least the majority of my career. I had a lot of apprehension about jumping in and doing that. And I told them no 2-3 times. And finally, they asked me so much that I just said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And really, at the time when I took it on, because of my lack of knowledge, and I understood that, know your weaknesses, know your strengths, I decided, okay, I'm going to run the culture and try and establish that and get it to the way I want it. And we're going to bring in some softball-minded people that have experience coaching. And so even to this day, while I've grown and learned some of the softball nuances in terms of fundamentals and schematics and within the game, it's still very much ran where I run a lot of the administrative stuff, almost like a manager, and then I've got coaches. And those guys do a really good job of preparing the kids and focusing on the fundamentals and details of playing the game. And I still pretty much focus on orchestrating the culture. It's not that far off. I told the kids in our first softball meeting that I've never coached a female athlete. I don't really understand the difference between the two because I haven't, and I'm not going to treat you any different as far as I know. I'm going to coach you like an athlete. And to a certain degree, I was a little bit wrong. I think sometimes the emotions are a little bit different, and you have to learn how to navigate those. And that took a little adjusting and some time. But I was also very blessed. When I entered, again, the program had 4 different head coaches in 4 years, and it wasn't a program that had flourished, if you will. And we went 16-10 or something like that our first year, and then I was blessed with an incredible group of young people who softball was kind of their thing. And so, timing has to be right a lot. And the next year we went 28-3, won the conference championship for the first time in school history. We had virtually, not all, but a ton of our team coming back in 2020. We were going from Class 3A to 2A, and we were so excited. preseason ranked fifth in the state, and COVID naturally shut us down. We didn't get to play a game. Those seniors lost that, and we rebounded in 21 with a group that returned, minus those 4 or 5 seniors, and made our first ever run to the Sweet 16. It's a process, and I'm not very good at walking across things with kids' gloves, if you will, or I'm not an eggshell guy. I'm a football coach by nature, and they understand and know that. But I still think it's all the same. I mean, it's relational. We're trying to develop relationships with young people. Yes, we're trying to win. We want to win at a high level in both sports. But the ultimate be-all, end-all game is preparing them to be successful in life. And I feel like not just through sport, but through our emphasis on trying to create leaders through our leadership stuff that we do is just as important as coaching boys, girls, softball, football, you name it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really think that's crucial. The idea of becoming like the CEO, right? Like you don't have to have your hands in everything. You don't have to be the one coaching the batting or coaching how the pitching's going, right? You can trust the people that you've brought in, which I think is also something maybe I want to touch on. I didn't even think about this, but being able to bring in people that you trust and kind of building that staff of understanding, I trust you to go do what you're really good at. Did it take some time to be able to do that in softball? Maybe not as much, but maybe in football, do you kind of take the same approach, even though you might have a little bit more understanding of the fundamentals there?
I'm a lot different, to be honest with you. In football, I'm very hands-on. I have my hand in everything, and sometimes too much, and I'm a very poor delegator. Um, Not because I don't trust the people on our staff, but because my knowledge is at a higher level in that sport. And that's what I've done over the course of my career. And to be fair and honest, that was my beginning passion, and it still is. I don't think that I cheat our female athletes in our softball program because, again, we did bring in people that have quite a bit of knowledge and do an incredible job for us in terms of the teaching and the schematics and managing the game in terms of making certain calls and plays, while I try to manage the game maybe with some personnel or picking people up or, sometimes telling people, having those hard conversations that you're not performing at the level we need you to perform at right now. So football's much different from that standpoint than softball. Which I think I've told this to several people in my circle that I love football practice. It's one of my favorite things there is because of the details and coaching all of the little things that become ultimately the big things. And sometimes the game isn't as much fun because of the pressure and whatnot. And softball's just the opposite. I want to go play. I want to get out of school at 2 o'clock or 1:30 every day, get on a bus and go play a game somewhere. And practice is not my favorite thing because I feel like my strengths as a softball coach come from the role in the game in terms of helping people ride the wave of success and failure and emotions and what have you, are better there than going to practice and coaching the fundamentals and nuances where I enjoy doing that in football much more.
Gotcha. That totally makes sense. I know my time as a college football coach, the practices were so much more fun. Just seeing like the improvement of guys and seeing them get better in practice, and then the games were just stressful. And Coach Sean Lewis, who's at San Diego State, would always tell us, "Hey, the games are about the players. They're not for you. We practice for us so we can feel good about games, but games are the experience for them." And I feel like that's probably similar for you when it comes to football, just being able, we have to practice really hard for me so I can feel good about the games, but then the games is to make their career and their experience really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard Coach Zook say multiple times, he'd go, this would be a great business if you didn't have to play the game. And it was all focused on the players and the development and what have you, and then the game just creates a different level of pressure for you.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to what you talked about with the basically emotional intelligence of being a leader, right? Understanding who you have and who you're leading, and not necessarily from a female or male perspective, but just in general. How long or what did it take for you to kind of understand that emotional intelligence or gain that?
Well, I think it's an everyday learning process. I don't think I have it mastered at this point. Clearly, as our team encounters some situations right now, both football and softball, um, one of the things we focused on a ton is we've created what we call Tiger Leadership Academy here. And it's an early bird class at 7 a.m., 2 days a week, where we discuss topics of leadership with our kids. And with leadership comes some emotional intelligence. They're learning those qualities. So I think that's become one of the biggest things for us in terms of the development of people, not just ball players. We've had members of the band in there. We've had members of the Scholastic Bowl, of the drama that participate in the play, as well as athletes and everyday students in that class. And I think um, the ability to teach them the qualities of leadership, like right now, one of the things we've been focused on is something that I've come up and created is 7 ships to sail for effective leaderships. And I'm a fan of the water and the ocean and pirates and all those things. And so we really focused on the 7 ships to sail. And the first one is when you come back to discovering people's emotional intelligence and how to handle theirs is relationship. That's the number one most important one. You can't have quality leadership if you don't have solid relationships built.
Yeah, I love that you guys do that. I didn't even know you guys did that at the high school, but I think that's something crucial that's lacking maybe across the nation. Again, I'm not in every single high school, so hopefully other high schools are doing it. But the idea of being able to start developing leaders now, right?
Yeah.
Not when they're in a manager position after they graduated college, not when they are a mom or a dad, but like when they're actually in high school, they can start learning how to lead other people. That way, when they get to that leadership point, they're like, oh, I kind of know how to do this. Obviously, there's still some learning on the fly. Like we're all learning in life, but I would love to hear more about what you guys are doing to make sure that they have those leadership capabilities. And then are there any things where you're like, okay, go use this now in your band or in softball or football or soccer, whatever it is?
Well, one of the things we make them try to understand is that vulnerability is going to be part of the journey. And I'm very open, probably more open in that class than I am within our everyday teams about shortcomings and mistakes. And I think in order to be an effective leader, we have to teach young people the mistakes that we've made at an earlier age so they don't recreate those mistakes. I think, a lot of people, they want this fantasy leader to lead and guide them that has, been perfect and never made mistakes, and this is the person I want to follow. When in reality, I think it's the human being that's made mistakes and overcome those mistakes throughout the process or their journey. That's the person I want leading my child. I want my daughter to follow someone who has messed it up and overcame it, because you're going to have one of the ships we talk about is hardship. You're going to have those things in life, whether they're created by human nature or even self-inflicted wounds, because we all mess up and have mistakes. So I feel like you have to be vulnerable in order to get close and connected with people. So I think that's one of the biggest things to me. And then go ahead and follow up again with that question if you would.
It was more just like the understanding of how they maybe apply that once you teach it to them. Are there any like ways that you guys do exercises or at least encourage them to maybe apply those into real life so they can actually use them as opposed to just all this knowledge that they have?
Yeah, one of the things we try to do is create scenarios and role play a little bit, and we get kids to get out of their comfort zone. And look, leadership's hard. It's lonely at the top. We've all heard Kirby Smart talk about the millions of books and different workshops and things that you can go and research and do that talk about leadership, but very rarely do they talk about the cost of leadership and the difficulty that it can be to be in leadership. And I think it's even more difficult for young people to lead because of, I think social media is huge, and I think sometimes young people can really be mean spirited and wicked in their ways, or they don't understand necessarily how to embrace being led. And so because their peers won't embrace the being led, I think it stops people from wanting to be leaders. It's hard for them to call out their friend. I think that's a difficult thing. And the number one fear in America, obviously, is speaking in front of a group of people. And one of the things we've had is we've had some good leadership, and we've dipped here the last couple of years. 2 years ago, we were still a playoff team, but this year we had a season that we probably shouldn't have had, and we had some really good kids. But I feel like part of our dip was leadership. And I had a guy once engage in a conversation with me where I complained about the leadership. And I said, we just don't have leadership right now, or the right kind of leadership that I want right now. And he was very matter of fact. He asked me, he said, well, Claude, whose job is it to teach him how to lead? And I said, well, I guess mine. And he said, guess heck, it is yours. If you don't teach them to lead, they're not going to know how to lead. Sometimes they don't get that at home. But you're going to sit here and teach them all the nuances and fundamentals and techniques, how to split a double team, or how to wrong arm a trapper, or how to play press quarters. But if you don't take the time to teach them how to lead, then you're failing to a certain aspect. And so that's when our leadership class became really instrumental. And I don't mean by, for those watching, and this will get obviously through social media, and people I hope in our channels will see, I don't mean in any way, shape, or form that we didn't have leaders in our program. We had several leaders by example. And while I think there's a ton of value in leadership by example, you have to have verbal leadership as well. And so many young people are afraid to be verbal for the fear of being persecuted by their peers.
Yeah, there's so much I want to touch on right there, so I'm gonna have to try and break all that down. But that was amazing about what you talked about between being vulnerable initially. That's what leadership takes, is to be vulnerable. So I want to touch on that a little bit. But then the idea of like, it is your job to teach them how to lead. They're not sponges. They're not just gonna absorb leadership by watching you or hearing you or whatever it is. And I actually ran across that a little bit when I was a coach, a college coach. We'd have coaches that would be like, we have no leaders on this team. In my head, I was like, because all we teach them is X's and O's. We teach them how to go play the game, and we expect them just to look at us and be like, go lead. And they don't know how to. And so I think the leadership part of where you guys decided, hey, let's go install this class so that we can bring it to them. And it's a way for them to role play and actually put into practice what we're teaching them, I think is a big step in the right direction of, we're not just going to expect you to lead without showing you. Because again, you would never expect someone to go be able to run a play without practicing it. You're not going to go on Friday nights and be like, all right, we're going to run XYZ triple back reverse or whatever it is that you would call the play, and then expect them to execute without practicing that. And it's the same idea. And I think sometimes coaches, that's sometimes lost on them, that they have to teach that leadership before they expect to see it returned.
Right, no question. And we several of the things that we do. So obviously, we focus on what I have created in a small part, 7 ships of leadership, seven ships to sail, and it's really based off of, I settled on the number of 7, and I have our kids, when we first start, I have our kids try and like name those ships. And sometimes they come up with really good ones, like sportsmanship is one that's on that our kids have come up with in the past that isn't one of our 7 ships or mine that I've created through it, but it's still really good. So it gives them some ownership going through the process of trying to name it. And then once we get the 7 ships and we go through all of that, we have them divide up into groups. Actually, we just did that Thursday in our class. They go through, we have them rank those ships in order of 1 to 7 and what they feel is most important, or the things that are lacking within their groups and organizations or teams that they're in right now. And
Absolutely.
then obviously, one of the things, I think mental toughness is one of the things that gets in the way of people being really effective leaders. And so we'll begin to dive into the mental toughness playbook that obviously you and I are both very familiar and connected to Ben Newman, who I think does a magnificent job. And then I'll also we'll break out and do a workshop which takes a few weeks to go through the power of positive leadership, because while I don't think everything is filled with rose-colored glasses. I still think positivity does win. And I'm very much on board with a lot of the teachings and precepts that John Gordon and his group teaches.
Absolutely. I think the power of positivity is huge, and being able to reframe, like Ben talks about, of finding that good. Brian and I just talked about it on the last podcast of being able to look at a situation that seems like everything's wrong. Nothing
Right.
could be good from anything that happened, like losing in the state playoff, right? There's nothing that feels good from that at the time. But then if you're able to eventually look back on that and reframe that, or even be in a situation of we're down 7 in the fourth quarter and we throw an interception, there seems like there's nothing good in that. But to be able to look at it and be able to understand, okay, this is a time where we can actually look and find if we were built for this, if we're built to be able to come back, if we're built to be able to overcome adversity. And those are the times that you can use that power of positivity to find, like, all right, good, we threw the interception. Now our defense gets a chance to step up for us. Oh, we hit a home run, or we got a home run hit on us. All right, we're down 1. That's with really only 1 inning left. That doesn't feel good, but now's the time for our bats to step up and start hitting good singles, doubles, home runs, whatever it is.
Well, in those very moments that you talk about are the times that the things you either taught or failed to taught rise and come to the surface or sink, be it ways to leadership, positive leadership, mental toughness. And if you're not teaching those things, you're going to get exposed in those moments.
Yeah, the I just saw actually I think it was a TikTok or a reel of Gino Ariama talking about, he had a discussion with his players about, well, if you want to practice here, well, then we're going to perform here, especially when the final 4 hits or the championship hits, we're going to drop even lower because you're heightened, you're in a high stress situation, so your performance naturally drops a little bit. But if we practice here and then we drop to here and everybody else is just practicing here, we're going to be above them.
Right.
And it's the idea of, like, if we're not teaching this stuff before we get to the pressure points, or if we're not implementing hard times before we get to the hard times that actually show up in our life, that's when we're going to actually sink to a level below even maybe our training at that point.
Well, and I think one of the most important things we have to do is we have to teach kids to handle adversity, because in this day and age, maybe more than any other that I can recall, kids don't handle failure very well. They're not built to handle it. They're built to handle likes and loves and different things through their social media apps, and everything they do, they want it to be successful or it's impressionable. And failure is not easy, right? Obviously, it's difficult, but we don't teach young people how to handle and cope with that adversity very well. And then we're shocked when they don't handle it well. So that's why I think the importance of teaching young people how to handle failure and adversity is very much a part of our class, and also along the lines of our leadership stuff. And one of the ships is hardship. We talk about that a ton. Embracing those positions that you're in that maybe have been created by someone else, unfortunately, and even sometimes by your own mistakes.
Yeah, I think I actually agree with you, and I go through it myself of struggling with failure and not wanting to fail, or that not feeling good. But the one thing that I like to teach is the controllables, right? You can only control what you can control. And I teach 5 controllables. One was added from Ben, but it's the effort, your attitude, your target, which is your focus, your toughness, which is your discipline, and then your environment, controlling your environment around you. Now, everything else outside of that is outside of your control. But as part of your effort, I teach failure. And that failure is okay. It's part of the process. And I like to spin it in the fact of failure is just life's way of saying, do it again, but better this time. And I think if you're able to instill that into young people, helping them understand that if they failed, the world's still spinning. You're still
Yes.
having to keep attacking whatever's in front of you. You can't just be done because you failed one time. And understanding that in the past, all these great people that we look at, that we see that are successful, they all failed multiple, maybe even numerous times in their life. But we're going to give up on one failure. We're going to give up one time because we didn't get exactly the result we want. I think that's crucial and I want you to speak more about how you guys maybe talk about hardship and how working through that.
Well, that's a great segue. The one thing that we're going to preach the most day in, day out is don't make the trouble the thing. Make the solution and the response the thing. Uh, we're all going to have trouble. We're going to have trouble in our personal lives. We may have trouble in our relationships. We're going to have trouble, young people, in academics, or a personality conflict with a teacher, or we're going to have trouble in our athletics or our extracurricular activities. Young people are learning to go into the workplace at times and have part-time jobs. There's going to be trouble at every single turn in your life. And don't make the trouble the thing. We focus a lot on make the response and the solution the thing.
Yeah, it's the I forget who said it, but don't bring me problems, bring me solutions, right?
Yeah,
Like finding
amen.
those solutions before just being like, I have a million problems in my life. It's like, okay, well then what are the solutions to those problems? Because every problem, like a math problem, has a solution. So we got to look at those solutions. I want to go back a little bit because you're talking about hardship, and when you have a hardship in your life, sometimes you need to go to a leader, a mentor, a coach to help you, and you see yourself as a leader, maybe as an athlete or a person in business, and you see yourself as a leader, so you don't want to necessarily be like, I don't know what to do, or I'm confused, or I need help here. And that takes vulnerability.
Amen.
And so I would like you to talk about, when you talk about vulnerability, because I feel like a lot of people think that vulnerability means I have to pour my whole heart out. Everybody has to see my whole like guts and everything. But what is true like vulnerability to you?
I mean, I think it's the ability to be open. I think it's the ability to be open and talk about the mistakes that you've made. But I think in that vulnerability, it comes with to one. Our third ship is ownership. You have to be accountable and responsible to the decisions that you've made, and um, I think having ownership and the ability to kind of get under the hood with yourself at times. Okay, I made a mistake, but also having the courage. I think vulnerability is it's courage to a certain degree, and I have multiple mentors that I have the ability to reach out to. Fortunately, my mother's still around at 69 years old, and I have many coaches and friends and people in the business world that maybe aren't in education that I rely on them a lot of times to have those conversations, and I never look at it as I'm the guy that has to have all the answers. I'm not the guy that has all the answers. I want to be the guy that when I don't have the answers, my response again that may be considered a little bit of a hardship, but my response is finding the solution. What are the answers? I want to go and I'll ask anyone. I think that's probably to a certain degree why you and many of us first joined that inaugural class of Ben Newman's Coach to Coaches because we didn't have answers to things we wanted answers to. And he did an incredible job of giving us those answers. So I think you have to have courage in order to be vulnerable. I do think it has to do with being open, not necessarily always pulling your heart out, but understanding that you don't have all the answers, and it's okay to go searching for them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the ownership part of vulnerability, of knowing like I own this and I need help to be able to solve this problem or create that solution. And then it's the idea of, you know what, I also need to be able to connect with this person, right? In order to be a leader, you have to connect, like you said, with relationships. So I have to be a little bit vulnerable. They have to know who I am, or they're not going to trust me. They're not going to want to follow me. And a great thing that, it's not a quote from him, but he always would talk about, was Ben Needham, one of my, he's the defensive coordinator when I was at Kent State. And he talked about no one cares how much you know until they know that you care. And I think that's a big part of being vulnerable. Like, you have to be able to relate with these athletes. You have to be able to relate with the people that you're leading in business, because they have to know who you are first, and they have to see that you actually care about them more than whatever the job is in front of them.
Which comes back to relationships, right? You have to have established relationships. And when we're talking about developing relationships with our kids, we talk about the 4 C's of relationships. And the first one is communication. We think it's absolutely the number one most important one. You have to communicate. You have to have the ability to communicate and communicate properly, and the willingness to. Where there's a void in communication, the saying is, what fills that void? Negativity. If you and I are in a situation where maybe we're not in agreement or we're not aligned and we don't communicate about it, The only thing that's happening there in our heads is negativity. I'm thinking about all the things you think are wrong or bad with my opinion right now, and you're thinking the same thing. So, where there's a void in communication, negativity fills that void. So, we have to communicate. And then, why do we communicate? We communicate to connect. And once you have connection, now it starts to build the bond. It starts to build the bond of trust. And then after that bond of trust is built because of that connection, then you begin to care. You begin to care about one another. And I've never been around organizations that are successful where people genuinely don't have care for each other, or at least there's going to be a ceiling if they don't genuinely care about one another. They probably won't be as good as maybe they could be if they did. And then once you get past the care, then you have some care. So through that communication and connection and that emotion of care comes commitment. And then once you commit, you go all in with each other. And I think that's what gives you the opportunity to be the most successful.
That's awesome. I actually haven't heard the three C's, so uh, it's actually a great way to segue into understanding how to live your life, but lead it. You always talk about live and lead. And I
Yeah.
want you to dive into where you kind of came up with that.
Yeah, I was just sitting around. It was during COVID. I was struggling, and that's really when I went into and got certified as a Power of Positive Leadership trainer through John Gordon's companies. And I had read some of John's books, and I had used some of his sayings and things throughout the years of our program. And I was really at a place in COVID because in a lot of states, I don't know how many, but a lot of states went ahead and went back to school and played sports. And maybe they masked up and did different things in order to go on and play. Well, in Illinois, we didn't. We came back to school and we weren't allowed to play sports. We turned our gym into two separate cafeterias and our cafeteria into two separate cafeterias for social distancing. And we came back and we had desks spaced apart in schools. And we contact traced and did all those things that you had to do in order to, um, you know, follow the rules, if you will, and protect. But um, I struggled because not that the value of education isn't important, because it is, but the part of the education that I was mostly a part of in terms of coaching, those were washed away. We weren't allowed to play football in the fall. We didn't play basketball in the winter. And then we all kind of got shortened seasons once we got into late January, February. We actually played football in the spring that year. We didn't have a playoff system that year, but we got 6 games in the spring. And then our softball team actually, because that was the first group of kids that lost, we actually got to have a shortened season, but also a state tournament. Baseball, softball, and track and field were the only things that were allowed to have state series competitions that year, nearing the end of that thing. And I struggled. I mean, I struggled with it. So I dove deep into some leadership things and felt like this is a place where I have to be here for the kids because they were struggling. They were going through a lot of hardship, and not just them, their parents, their grandparents. Those senior kids were losing not just, everyone says, well, we lost a year. Those kids lost a year. Those kids lost the end. They lost everything. They didn't get an opportunity to have uh, a lot what we would call their normalcy. It was in a way, for one reason or another, robbed and taken from them. And I struggled with that also because again, the things that I love to do, I wasn't getting an opportunity to do here. I once said I might as well go down to the factory and work there because the things I love doing here, we're not getting to do. Which obviously, looking back, that probably wasn't a great statement, but it was how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
It was where I was at. I was missing a lot of those things. So um, diving into something because I'll tell you this about Coach Clod. I'm not a perfect man. I've made a ton of mistakes in my life. I make a ton of mistakes personally. I make a ton of mistakes professionally. And idle time can sometimes be the devil's time for Coach Clod. So I'm not very good on idle. I need structure, and I dove deep into the leadership stuff at that point in time.
That's awesome. Yeah, the idea of when you're living, you're also leading.
Yeah,
right? No matter what, whether you're leading a team, leading a business, or just leading yourself, right?
yeah,
You're always leading someone. So I like the idea of like whether you're living and it's just you're going about your life, you're leading yourself. If you're living and you're going about and coaching a team, you're leading them. So it's every single day you're leading someone. I want you to dive into like any like principles or any like thing that goes along with living and leading and just whatever comes to mind.
Well, when I first started, I'm a big acronym guy, so I try to build things off of acronyms a lot of the times. I talk about the 5 P's a ton: prior preparation prevents poor performance. Um, but in terms of living and leading, and it's been a long time since I've really talked about necessarily uh, from that standpoint. But at that time, living was, how do you live your very best? Well, you love. You have to love people, and ultimately, you have to be willing to love yourself, and that's not selfishness. You have to be able to love yourself in order to really love others. And then the I recall, was investing. You have to invest in other people to live the best life you can. But also, again, you have to invest in yourself, whether it be development, or whether it be exercise and eating right, or whatever it is. You have to take time to invest in yourself. And then the V was value. Um, you have to value other people. You have to value other people's places and whatever roles they play within your life. And also, you have to have value of yourself. I'm going to be terrible here with the E because it's like just slipped my mind, but it may come back to me as I jump to lead. Again, it's been quite a while since I really talked about living and leading. We will get back into it a little bit here with the leadership classes that's began, or it's resurfaced this second semester. Um, the leading, boy, you got me at a blank here. I
So
know the E, I remember
I
I remember the E was empowering, because I think
okay,
it's really important to empower people, and the A was affecting. And I'm not so sure that the leading wasn't love also. I think I had a double L in there at the
double
time,
L,
because I
yeah.
think in order to really live and to lead, there has to be love. People talk about the best leaders know how to have love and accountability. You can't have one without the other. Uh, they're both extremely important. When you talk about leadership and love and accountability, it can't just be all love. If it's all love, things are probably not going to end up the way you want them to be. But it just can't be about accountability, because, again, like you said, they don't really care what you know until they know how much you care. So I think there has to be a balance there between the love and the accountability. So I do recall the second L being love again. And as I said, the E was empower, and the A was affect. We have to affect these people. We have to affect these people in a positive way, in order for them to go out into the real world and be successful. And the last one was D, and that was development. And I think it's so important. A lot of times people want to be leaders, and I've probably been in this situation before, but I don't want to give the secrets away, right? I want to be the leader. But it's important that we develop people in order to become the next leaders or future leaders. And that's why I think I have so much respect for these home run hitters, these guys that are huge in our industry, like John Gordon, Ben Newman, Damon West, who I've developed a bond and relationship. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Coffee Bean. It's a
Yeah.
great message. I have so much respect for these guys because it's their industry, it's their game, but they're so open and willing to share with others like you and I. And all they're really doing is they're assisting in the development of us going out in our own circles or pockets or corners of our worlds and becoming extensions of them and leaders.
Yeah. No, I just love the live and lead. I saw that and I was like, there's got to be something behind it. So I wanted to break it down. So I love that. The love part on being both. And I think I like the idea of how you said by loving someone, you keep them accountable.
Yep.
And I think that's truly how you show love to them is by holding them accountable, not letting them drop below their standard or drop below what they're capable of. Because I always told my athletes when I was coaching them, if I stop coaching you, stop holding you accountable, that's when you should be worried, right? When I stop holding you accountable because I love you enough to know that that's not your standard, that's when you should be worried.
That's correct. Absolutely.
So,
No question.
yeah. That's what I love. Live and lead. I love that one. I might have to steal that from you
Yeah,
because
let it rip.
that's a good one. But I also appreciate all those people that have brought their development to us. I know like Ben's been a huge one on me for just kind of empowering me to utilize his prize fighter day, utilize his burn, and I've turned that into a hunger and an alpha day. But those people that are willing to do that, that's amazing. And I think it's also great that they're building what I consider an alpha pack, right? A pack of alphas, people that want to go help other people, and they allow people like us to go do that in our
Right,
little small spaces to make sure that the people that they can't reach are still getting taught, developed, and groomed to be leaders of this world.
right. No question. And, those people could just write their books and they could just sell their online courses or they could just go do keynotes and speak and be done with it. But I think the idea of them putting together packages and master classes and what have you, and giving people the opportunity to participate in, to learn from them, like Ben says, now, it was a fight to a billion or a fight to 2 billion. Let's go change the world in every single corner or pocket that there is, because, um, Ben's mental toughness is a part of leadership, and it can be a part of positivity. And the burn is huge in terms of ownership and discipline. And I think so many people don't have that in their lives. And I think what's really important is that we invest in ourselves. And while, yes, I'm open for business, I'll speak to uh, businesses, school districts, but I still believe that my greatest niche is the ability to connect and bring these messages to young people before they get going out into the real world.
That's awesome. Yeah. Getting paid to go speak and go work with people is great, but I think I truly did love the part of being able just to impact young people when I was coaching and just being around them, see them grow, see them become better people. And then now some of the guys I coach are on the Wheeling Miners in the indoor football league, and I coached them when they were in college. And to see them grow as people and see them kind of achieving a dream and living that dream out has been awesome. So the one
Cool.
thing I'm gonna end with is there anything that we didn't touch on, anything that you would give advice to young people or a younger version of yourself to kind of wrap things up here?
Yeah, I think be coachable. We all have to be coached. We all need coaches. Um, I obviously need a coach at 47 who's been coaching for 20 some years. Be coachable. Um, Embrace being coached. Embrace your failures. And I think it's really important that young people understand that the people who love you the most are going to hold you the most accountable. There's the old saying where it says, never change. The people who say don't ever change and just be you, they probably don't love you as much as you need loved. You need the people that are pushing you, that are holding you accountable to not just be you or stay stuck in the same place, but to constantly get better, become the best version of you. And the only way you become the best version of you is through continual development and by getting better day by day.
That's awesome. Yeah. I couldn't agree more, to be honest. That's almost a mic drop. We're good on that. But I will put your stuff in the description below whenever I post this on Spotify and YouTube, and people can find you if they want to talk to you more and maybe have you come speak to their school district or their team or work with you as a coach. And if not, they'll at least have that information there for you. So I really appreciate you coming on, Coach Clod. It's been a blast. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, I appreciate it, and like I said, open for business, and I enjoy that. I go out and speak to school districts in terms of positive leadership, whether it be and mental toughness and just leadership. By itself, I've spoke to school assemblies of schools, of mass gatherings and administrations and teams and businesses and what have you, and it's something that I really enjoy, and I think it makes a difference. And sometimes the power of having an outside voice is what really resonates with a group of people. And I say that with our own. I bring people in to speak to our kids because I think sometimes our kids probably get sick of hearing my voice. Shoot, sometimes I get sick of hearing my voice. So I think if the message is consistent, there's a lot of value from bringing other people in to be another voice to reassure the message and be consistent of that message.
Absolutely. I will make sure that it's down there. So anybody that listens that needs Coach Clod or just once again that extra voice to bring the same message, but maybe in a different way so people can connect to it and you can keep your business or your team or your school streamlining in the right direction of what you want. So thanks for tuning in to Leading the Pack. I hope you learned a lot about Coach Clod and what he's doing, making an impact, not only with his teams, not only with his school, but with people beyond that. So don't forget to like or leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss out on a single episode, and please share this podcast with anybody who's ready to level up and lead their pack. We have a lot more high performers just like Coach Clod and great leaders just like Coach Clod lined up. So we're going to keep bringing you all these different level ups, all these different tools and ability or techniques to help you become the alpha of your life. So until next time, stay hungry, keep leading your pack. Now go attack the work.